everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
Hello, Scott.
Hello, and not joined by my voice, which continues to try and abandon me on one of the biggest news days of the year, because PlayStation have announced their Game Pass equivalent, let's say, was codenamed Spartacus, and now it's going to be the PlayStation Plus extended thing with 3 different tiers. Which we should break down. So this is the answer to, obviously, Game Pass overall, the fact that they want to be able to give you access to PS3 games, PS1, PS2, and PSP and stuff like that.
Yes.
Which is good, but there's a few little caveats in here, and I am still amazed that they announced all this stuff on a blog post and not just a little video with the PlayStation 5 playing Tekken 3 and having the classic PlayStation logo. How awesome would that have been?
It would have been, Scott, but I'm not surprised, and I'll tell you why soon.
Okay, so let's break down some stuff. 3 tiers to the new service launching in June. The cheapest one is PlayStation Plus Essentials, which is essentially what PlayStation Plus is now. That will still be $10 a month or £7 a month if you're over in the UK. That's literally what PlayStation Plus is now. So that's cloud save stuff. That's a couple of games a month. All that stuff that you already have. Next one up is PlayStation Plus Extra, which is up to 400 of the most enjoyable PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 games, and they are downloadable. That's $15 a month or £11. And the last tier, which is the juiciest thing, is PlayStation Plus Premium, which adds, all these things stack as well. So this third tier adds up to 340 games from the PS1, the PS2, the PS3, and PSP generations. They can't even say Vita. I'll say Vita, assumedly, and the PSP Go.
Assumedly, Scott.
Assumedly, to this overall package, but in both streaming and download options. They have also confirmed that PS3 games will be streamable only, plus the latest trials, plus trials of the latest games, and that will be $18 a month or £13.50. That makes it more expensive than Xbox Game Pass, because Game Pass is $14.99 and $14.99 and $10.99 a month. Pounds, what do you think?
Juice me up, baby. I want the juiciest version
Juiced will not be on
this.
The service.
Scott Tilford, I want those classic PlayStation games. I want the PlayStation 1 games. I want the PlayStation 2 games. I even want the streamed PlayStation 3 games, my friend.
You don't want them to be streamed, Josh.
Well, I don't, but the thing is, right, I mean, we'll get into why they're streamed to begin with, but it's almost certainly the cell architecture, right? Like, the way the PS3 was put together, the way that people had to make games for that thing, and the very specific processor that machine had, has essentially screwed Sony over for decades now. The fact that you can't just, go back to the games from that era and go, okay, this is going to be an easy transition over. You have to, rebuild everything. It's a faff-on, to put lightly, so I'm not surprised that they're downloadable, that they're streaming only. Is it disappointing? Of course it is, but I understand why we've got there. And it's like, this is migrating over from PlayStation Now, obviously, and there is a huge, library of PlayStation 3 games that are streamable on there right now.
True.
And a lot of them do work well. Like, obviously, they're not the best versions. If you play Metal Gear Solid 4 on there, you'll have a good time, but you won't have the best time. So to me, it's kind of like, this is something I have to accept to get the rest of the package. I
kind of look at it, and like I said, I'm a bit deflated by the way that they've done it in the blog post style of things, because they've not actually detailed what games are going to be on here. There's a lot of asterisks, there's a lot of region-specific stuff, and there's not really a conversation yet. I mean, maybe they're just seeding this so that they can, unleash stuff in June, and then also go sign up right now. But there's not really any conversation around what their overall approach is to curation. Like with the PlayStation Classic, as soon as more data miners got a hold of that thing and brought all those different files across to PC, they realized that Sony had tested as many different titles as you might think, the Crash Bandicoots, the Soul Reavers, everything else. But obviously the PlayStation Classic that came out was threadbare as hell and barely held together, and it kind of spoke to a PlayStation or a Sony that doesn't fully respect their history as much as they could. So even the fact that they've done this when you're PlayStation and you're one of the most important names in gaming history, not getting out there and saying, like, we're going to have Crash Bandicoot, we're going to have the old Resident Evils, we're going to have Metal Gear Solid, but we're not going to. They should have been screaming those things from day one.
I know what you mean, but I mean, listen, right? When it comes to backwards compatibility stuff, there's obviously a hardcore subset who, love that thing. You want to go back, want to play the old Resident Evils, want to play the old Metal Gears and stuff. But this being a first step forward, I think it's telling the games that they did name. They put the focus on the PlayStation 4 first party stuff, because that's been their bread and butter. Like, that's what people buy PlayStations for. They buy them for those exclusives. So to get out of the gate here, like the games that they name drop, Death Stranding, Spider-Man Miles Morales, God of War, all of those titles, they made it the kind of front and center of this announcement that they were going to be there. Like, if you get the second or third tier, you're going to have access to those first party games. True. And I'm sure the rest will come in time. Is it disappointing we didn't get a bigger list, just running down, say, 50 or 100 games? I would have liked that, but there's a lot of time between now and June for that to roll out.
That's true. It's interesting in regards to why people buy PlayStation. I might contest what you said, because I think as much as people buy into the PlayStation exclusives, exclusives now. And there's a banger of a quote from Jim Ryan talking about that in a second. People didn't used to buy into PlayStation for the exclusives. They didn't. Like, you've got the likes of the Metal Gear Solids, the Resident Evils, but a lot of them franchises went cross-platform over time. It's only really been the PS4 onwards where they've completely embraced the exclusive stuff, where they've really started doing the PlayStation Studio stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like for the longest time, PlayStation was as associated with third-party stuff, the Tekkens, like I said, the Resident Evils, the Final Fantasies, in a way that I thought they would double down on with this. I thought if they were going to do a whole thing that celebrated the history of PlayStation, they would do a whole bunch of deals with the third parties. Part of me did genuinely think that they might do the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters. That's why Square Enix were maybe holding back on them. And something like that still could come to the service, but there's so much more that could be done here, and it's a bit too nebulous. And you can say, dude, it's just a blog post, but it's the first step forward, and it's the Game Pass equivalent. That's how it's going to be written about. They need to do this stuff right. There's obviously the price comparison stuff, but to bring in Jim Ryan's thing, he did an interview with GamesIndustry.biz talking about the new service and the fact that obviously over on Game Pass, Xbox released their newest titles day in, day one on Game Pass itself, Halo Infinite, Sea of Thieves, whatever it is, you get those things day one. They're not going to be doing that, but the way that he phrased it in regards to day one exclusives, the £70 stuff, the super premium stuff, he said that's not a road we're going to go down with this new service. We feel like if we were going to do that with the games that we make at PlayStation Studios, the virtuous cycle would be broken. The level of investment that we need to make in our studios would not be possible, and we think the knock-on effect on the quality of the games that we make would not be something that gamers want. The virtuous cycle he's referring to is something earlier in the article where he mentions that they have such a solid turnaround of studios and titles right now. That's the virtuous cycle, and that they don't want to break. He says that's what gamers want. I disagree.
Right, go on.
Horizon Forbidden West would be a bigger deal if that was the case. Wouldn't have been obliterated by Elden Ring.
I do not think that is true whatsoever. It absolutely would be. People would still buy Elden Ring. That's blow my head clean off. I see what he's saying here. I think it probably is just PR speak, the fact that these games aren't going to go to this service day one. But at the same time, like, Sony's first party stuff especially does cost lots of money. They are a premium price point, and why I don't necessarily think that justifies putting the base price of the games up like they wanted to make these titles $70 and stuff. I do kind of see the fears of, well, if you make things content, if you just make it become content, then how do you justify spending all of that time, all of those resources, all of that money on these big marquee titles if you're unsure how it's going to make the money back? It's always the difference between Sony and Microsoft. Microsoft has these like deep, endless pockets where they can throw around millions and millions of dollars and not worry about what they get in return to the same extent that Sony does, where they're like, right, this needs to be a hit. Like, we need to try to make this, as appealing as possible. And I think that's where they differ, and that's where they definitely differ when it comes to the first party stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and also with the first party stuff, their answer to Xbox throwing their exclusives on their day one is assumedly the game trial stuff. Where you will assumedly get access to the new maybe the new God of War on day one. You can go play it, but then they'll need you to cough at the price tag further down the line. I quite like that middle ground because I obviously see what Jimbo means in regards to the opulence of a PlayStation exclusive. They are night and day to the likes of Halo Infinite. And if we try and even name any other Xbox exclusives that come to mind in general, because they are lacking, Forza Horizon 4, I guess. Great game. But it's not up there in terms of the conversation, in terms of I just don't think it's up there with Halo. I don't think it's a big thing that's going like, oh my god, next generation, look what it can do.
Go on, I don't want to derail you. That was a really good point you were making.
Thank you. But yeah, overall, I think that, if they need to invest in this thing that they've got moving, like I said, it kicked in around about the PlayStation 4 era, and they have this big exclusive push for what PlayStation means. And they're trying to walk that line. They're trying to compete with Game Pass whilst also saying, we're PlayStation. We have these big over-the-top productions and everything. My contention, which is what I pointed out before, just is that idea of they've started playing it safe. The thing that he refers to for me is them playing it safe. The virtuous cycle, turning things around. Everything has a workbench. Everything's, it's got open world elements and crafting components and an over-shoulder camera, and it's that's the virtuous cycle to me. That's what he's referring.
I know what you mean. I mean, there was that report from, I think, Bloomberg last year where they were talking about how difficult it is to get certain games off the ground in Sony now. Apparently, according to that report, apparently how focus tested they were with wanting everything to be a Horizon level smash hit. Like, if that is the future, that is a little bit scary. But until those games stop being good, like, I'm going to ride that out, because for me, I really, really, really liked Horizon Forbidden West. Gran Turismo 7, before they changed the grind, was really great as well. So they haven't hit a proper road bump in the same way that, say, Bethesda did, for instance, where it just kind of became untenable. I'm still enjoying the path they're on. I just don't want those original ideas to get stifled for yet another sequel or something.
No,
but hopefully that won't be the case, because the likes of Ghost of Tsushima and what have you prove that new IP, even if they're familiar genre, within familiar genre frameworks, does have the potential to reach a mass audience.
I think it's fascinating watching Sony just roll with the punches. Like, they're just sort of like, we believe in generations. Actually, no, we don't. And like, oh, we're going to do massive opulent first-party exclusives that are with a premium price point. Oh, actually, no, we need to respond to the fact that there's a Game Pass alternative and find a way to do this stuff monthly instead. And just sort of getting out there going like, well, it was all part of the plan all along. We can't do this because it's going to affect this. I find that stuff kind of fascinating. What do you think of the price comparison stuff? We don't know what games are going to be on here yet.
That's it, yeah.
But I guess in terms of how Xbox and Game Pass feels, does this feel like a worthy contender at this point?
I just need to know more. I think the stuff that they've detailed, going all the way back to like those legacy machines, if they get a good library of PlayStation 2 games, they've already got PlayStation 3 games or PS Now, PS1 games, like that would be enough to get me in there. If they announce that Resident Evil 2, like the original Resident Evil 2 is on there, I would probably buy that premium thing straight away. I like what they're doing, migrating PlayStation Now accounts over. I don't know if we mentioned that, but if you have a PlayStation Now account, you're going to get the PlayStation Premium, the highest tier here, like at the exact same price at launch. I'm sure that will eventually change, but that's cool that people like me who paid and bought into PlayStation Now are getting migrated and rewarded over. That's cool.
Do you think that they will do the likes of the stuff that Xbox do, where games run smoother, they have better resolutions, they have higher frame rates? Do you think they'll do that stuff, or will they be basic ports like the PlayStation Classic?
That, my friend, is going to be the clincher for me, because that is the best thing about Xbox Game Pass, in my opinion. It's going back to old games like Brothers in Arms Hell's Highway or something, and having the auto HDR there, having like a seemingly more stable frame rate, maybe even higher resolution in some cases. If the games that we do get on this Sony service are just the basic ports that we've seen, in some of the PlayStation 2 classics that are already available on PlayStation 5 and 4, like that'll be disappointing. I do think they need to go that kind of extra step to ensure that not only is this service a place where you can play these games, but it's the best place for those games.
The thing that's really crazy is if you look into the way that Xbox do their stuff, they have an entire wing of Xbox studios dedicated to trying these old games out and making sure they work and up-resing them and upscaling them and making sure all that stuff just works in a way that Sony absolutely do not. If you buy The Warriors or Ape Escape 2 or two titles that I've tried that you try and get them as a PS2 classic on the PlayStation 5, they tear, they fall apart, they barely run, like they've not been tested. Or if they have, there's nothing they could do about them, but they chose to sell them anyway. And so there's all that. If that ends up being that version of that game is what's fronting this new service, that's a disaster. Like it just needs to run. But yeah, I think Xbox, all their stuff is obviously more architectural. It's more to do with the hardware, and I wonder whether that just you're streaming a better version of the game if you get the streaming tier. But I think they should do something with that.
Totally. I personally do like that it's a mix between downloading and streaming. I like that even the premium tier offers those older PlayStation 2 games in streaming form, if that's easier for you. PlayStation Now, for all of its troubles, can be a good and reliable way to experience those games, even though it obviously won't be for everyone depending on internet connections and stuff. But just having the choice, to me, like that's a bonus. That is an incentive. I don't think they should lean on it too much, but it is an incentive to me and an addition, that will help, especially when you're playing stuff on PC, which I know is involved here.
That's the thing, because they mentioned in here that obviously the top tier gives you access to streaming and will let you stream the titles that are on the elite tier as well, as download certain games. But they do mention streaming on PS4, PS5, and PC. So they are kind of getting in there with, if you just have a PC, you already have access to Game Pass. You now have access to a PlayStation library as well. I personally hate streaming games. I just think that even like the remote, desync at all, the resolution gets affected, my timing gets off. I just hate the feel of it. It's not to say it's not technically impressive. Obviously, I like even when Xbox were testing their cloud streaming, just jumping into Halo on my phone was really awesome. But it's not a way that I'm ever going to play a game. It's download only for me.
Right.
And so I'm curious how they sell that stuff. Obviously, Sony bought into Gaikai back in the day. They tried a whole bunch of different things with that. And now streaming their games is on the top tier. So they still think it's a worthwhile thing to buy into.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the PlayStation 3, because that's literally the only way you're going to be able to play those games without getting an old... Yeah, it does. But if it's that or nothing, Scott, I want to play those PlayStation 3 games like in any form. Hopefully they can make them more stable. Hopefully they can, like you said, make it so you're streaming the best version of that game. But of course, I think the takeaway from this blog post is that there's still so much that remains to be seen.
Oh,
We've
yeah.
got the information now. We know the price. We know what the tiers are. We know how many games are going to be coming. It's just going to be the nitty-gritty of which games are being involved, how are they running, etc., etc.
Yeah, let us know what you think down in the comments below. Which titles do you want to see on there? How do you think it compares to the Game Pass equivalent? And just in general, how do you feel Sony have tackled this thing so far? For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
And we'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.